Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. I have a brand new guest on. Her name is Judi-Beth Atwood. Family courts continue to value the rights and freedoms of abusive partners over a protective parent's fundamental human rights to live and raise their children in peace and security. Abusive partners are seeking joint or full custody as a means of revenge, punishment, and continued control over domestic violence victims after previously sharing no parenting responsibilities and demonstrating no interest in doing so. The court's reckless dismissal and doubt of child physical and sexual abuse claims brought by protective parents. And Judi-Beth is a protective parent, and she's seeking changes in our family court system. And I welcome you to the show, Judi-Beth Atwood. You've got a lot to tell us. You're in Boulder, Colorado.
That's right, Mary. I'm in Boulder County, Colorado.
Oh,
I live in Longmont, Colorado, small little town here in Boulder County. I'd like to thank you for having me on the show. And I came on the show because I want to send a warning. I want to send a warning to all mothers and children in Boulder County and Weld County. Weld County and Boulder County are abusing the term parental alienation in similar concepts and terms invoke to deny child custody to mothers and grant it to a father accused of domestic violence in a manner that totally disregards a possible risk for the child must be, and these actions must be discouraged. Accusations of parental alienation by abusive fathers against mothers must be considered a continuation of power and control. And our state agencies and actors, including those deciding on child custody, are getting involved and working at stacking the deck against mothers. In this regard, we mothers in Boulder and Weld County call upon the state actors to provide explicit preventative measures devoted to the protection of our children. We mothers would like training for law enforcement and judicial authorities, and we would like to work with legislators to put into place guidelines to ensure that victims are treated appropriately. These guidelines should explicitly be provided to those coming into contact with women and children regarding the abuse of the pseudo concepts such as parental alienation and similar concepts. Concept. The abuse of these mentioned concepts must be explicitly outlawed, since they are often used by abusive fathers against mothers in order to deny mothers contact or custody, leading to the perpetuation of psychological and physical violence against the mother and child. On August the 24th of 2021, the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, advocacy groups, One Mom's Battle, and Custody Peace lodged a claim against a human rights violation and abuses against women in the family court system in California and throughout the United States. Over 100 women, which includes mothers from Boulder County and Weld County, joined in this claim. Each of these women has provided a letter describing her experience and attesting to the injustice of human rights violations she suffered as a woman navigating the family court system of her respective state within the United States of America. On today's show, I will give you a play-by-play technical overview of a conspiracy to interfere with civil rights, which involves attorneys, judicial officers, and several wrongdoers that use coercive control to abuse parents, which deprive several children out of love and eventually leaving the parents bankrupt. And I say parents because a lot of the studies that are being done currently involve women. United Nations complaint involves women, but men are affected by this as well. But today I'm basically going to try and stick to the fact that most of the time it's against mothers.
Mhm.
What I would like to share is what I call what family court has become. It's a game of telephone or Chinese whispers.
Mhm.
Violations of due process are taking place in our Boulder County Courthouse, and it must be taken seriously. I am calling upon the executive branch and the legislative branch to issue an order to audit the day-to-day business of family courts in our Boulder County Courthouse. Since learning that our cases are tainted by the bad state actors and agencies, which are the psychologists which are appointed by the courts, and child protection services here in Colorado, our investigative reporters from the Denver Gazette, the Greeley Tribune, and ProPublica have called out these bad state actors, and to date, no action has been taken to prevent more victims. What I need to make very clear before I start on my technical overview is that I have never been convicted or investigated for child abuse by child protection services or law enforcement. And I want to make mothers understand how dangerous these Boulder County courts have become for mothers. It's on October 27, 2022, investigative reporters from Colorado Politics exposed Judge Nancy Salmon from the Boulder County Courthouse for violations of due process in her courtroom. The case is the people in the interest of TL. I hope law enforcement agencies, state legislators, and federal agencies are listening this evening, because our children in Colorado are dying. They are dying. They are being deprived of kind, loving mothers because these state actors and agencies are stacking the deck against mothers and children. And these people need to be held accountable for their civil conspiracies, their violations of due process, putting their children in abusive homes, and profiting from this heinous psychological and financial abuse against mothers. Child protection services in both Weld County and Boulder refuse to believe children when they report sexual abuse. We need remedies to hold these poor decision makers accountable for terrorizing our children, making them stay with abusive parents, and depriving these children of a life free of violence.
And the thing I was going to ask you with this judge, it's so what would happen to her? Did they just totally take her off the bench?
My understanding is that she's being phased out, but they reassigned her.
Yeah.
That's my understanding. And that's
Huh.
not good enough.
No, it's not.
So I want to, before I go into talking about this particular situation that I became involved in, I'd like to let protective mothers know that currently in 2020, there's a good amicus brief that you can use in your case when you've been accused of parent alienation or parent alienation syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
That case is Richard Ducote.
Or Ducote.
Ducote. Versus Victoria McIntyre. And a lot of people don't understand what an amici is. So I want to tell you what that is.
Okay.
An amici is an individual or an organization who is not party to a case, but who is permitted to assist a court by offering information, expertise, or insight that has a bearing on the issues in the case. So in this particular amici, the brief will provide the court with research demonstrating the systemic and intolerable prevalence of sex bias in the family courts. So there was a number of advocacy groups that became involved, and this is very time consuming. So this situation involving the bias against women and children is well known.
Mm.
And it's been around for a long time, and it's getting, in my opinion, it's getting worse in Boulder County. It's not getting any better.
Mm-hmm.
So the case number for this amicus brief is I just lost it, 20-1627. And the number of people so I'd like to call out all of the people that participated in this, because I think it's important to understand the level of bias and the level of harm that's being done in the family courts. Mm-hmm. So the Women's Children Advocacy Project participated in this. The National Family Violence Law Center, the Stop Abuse Campaign, the National Organization for Men Against Sexism, the mm-hmm. Battered Mothers Custody Conference, Domestic Violence Legal Empowerment and Appeals Project, Women's Coalition, Child Justice, mm-hmm. California Protective Parents Association, the Endangered Collective, Protective Mothers of Solano County, the Mama Bear Effect, New Jersey Crime Victims Law Center, Westchester County Family Court Reform Initiative, Mother Child Human Rights Foundation, i.e. Mother's Revolution, the Nurtured Parent, Equal Means Equal, Jane Does Well, Incest Survivors, Speakers Bureau of California. These are all the groups that participated in writing this brief, in contributing the research to what is really a bias against moms in our family court system. So I was involved in this is a kind of a personal story, but I want people who are not involved in family courts to understand how this bias starts. And like I said, I think it's important to realize two things are happening that's contributing to this. It's like a game of telephone. Anybody can walk into a family court system and make accusations with no evidence. You don't have to be investigated by law enforcement agency. You don't have to be investigated by Child Protection Services. Any disgruntled person can walk into a courtroom and say, this person is a child abuser. Mm-hmm. And in my case, I just happened to be dating someone. Mm-hmm. And it started, believe it or not, so this is now 2022, and I'll get to how this all is now changing my life, mm-hmm. where I'm living, and how it came into the courtroom. Mm-hmm. So I'm dating this man, and we keep the dating like essentially we're dating, but we're not really public about dating. Mm-hmm. And we kept it under wraps for about 2 years. Then suddenly, out of the blue, he starts getting emails from his ex-girlfriend. Mm-hmm. And his ex-girlfriend says one night to him in an email, find another girlfriend. Never met her. She doesn't know anything about me that I know of. But, I just want to emphasize that we didn't think that these were going to amount to what they have. Mm-hmm. So then about 2 months later, we get more emails. And this time she says, and this went to a court-appointed psychologist that I was using. Says, for a year and a half now, my ex has a girlfriend. And for a year and a half, my son has interacted with this woman and her children are now sleeping in his house, and I don't even know. I don't know who this woman is, where she takes my son. And I demand to meet her. So she's asking the court-appointed psychologist to arrange a meeting. Like that's his job, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then she sends another email. And there was like 4 emails this evening. These emails are now, so now that she tried the psychologist that's involved in my own personal case, right? She now tries my boyfriend and says, I demand to meet your girlfriend. And I insist on meeting her. And these emails, like there was about 4 of them that evening, right? And that, so now we're into 2015. And so then she sends an email a month later, it's my legal right to meet your girlfriend. And then about 12 o'clock that night, she sends an email to my then boyfriend and says, Judy does not love you. So then another email went out about 4 months later, and it says, what is the name of your girlfriend? And I want to meet her. I mean, she's already identified who I am.
Yeah.
But like I have to emphasize that we didn't think much of these, right? We just thought, okay, what are you drinking?
Yeah. Or what medication are you not taking?
Exactly. So then so then we get on 2016, it was mid-January 2016, your girlfriend is sleeping with my son.
Oh.
Then we get this 3 days later, your girlfriend is mean. Your girlfriend will never respect you. Now, I demand to talk to Judy. Judy is abusing my son. And what I also have to point out is she is a teacher and a mandated reporter.
Oh.
And not once over this whole year nightmare was I ever reported to law enforcement or to CPS. So then a month later, she goes after my boyfriend's parent coordinator decision maker and says, I demand that my ex not be in a relationship with Judy, and my son should not be playing with her children. So then 2 months later, she goes after 3 months later, she goes after my parent coordinator decision maker. And she says, I demand to know the name of my ex's girlfriend's name. Okay. And in the same sentence, she says, Judy is mean and screams a lot. Now, I've never met her. In the same sentence, she's stating that she wants to know the name of my then boyfriend's girlfriend. And then she's saying that I'm mean and that I scream a lot. So then she says, 2 months later, my son is too old to be sleeping with Judy. And then she says, a month later, I want my son to know that I live him. So a lot of the times we're trying to interpret what she's asking us to do. I live him, and that there is nothing bad to tell me that my daughters are at school. The contrary, he might be developing some psychosis. So now she's telling me that I'm developing psychosis for him, right? Then on 7/21, she sends an email about midnight saying that I'm a monster and that my boyfriend's son is drawing all these terrible pictures of me. And then I want to let people to know that this is usually what happens when parents try to leave a relationship and have another one. Like when somebody is not dealing with a full deck, right?
Right.
I mean, I would not do this. I certainly wouldn't make these judgments unless I've met somebody. Like maybe if I met somebody,
Yeah.
you know, I'm sure people go off on their exes, right?
Mhm. And it seems like when the ex, meets someone new, then all hell breaks loose.
Yes,
They
well,
remarry.
if and that happens when people are not playing with the full deck, right?
Right.
Since people are playing with the full deck, they move on to their own lives,
Right.
right? They're not infatuated or fixated on trying to control the other person,
Oh, yes.
right?
Yes.
So that's the other thing to point out here. This is control.
Mhm.
This is somebody trying to control their ex, right?
Mhm.
So then she sends another email, and I want to point out too that these state actors are getting these emails and they're doing nothing about it. They are not managing these emails. These PCDMs, these parent coordinators, decision makers, they have the ability to say, you have to stop sending these emails. They can write a court order,
Mhm.
but nobody's really doing what they should be doing. That's
Mhm.
been my experience. So she sends another email to my boyfriend's PCDM and says, my son told me that Judy is changing everything in our house. I want my son to share these details with me. I don't care what she does in the house, but I want to know when she moves the furniture around.
Oh, yeah.
So then a week later, she goes into the courthouse and gets my court orders and sends them to the PCDM. So now it's 2018. This all started in 2015. And she sends a request at 1:30 a.m. It's, I want to meet Judy. I don't want you in a relationship with her. So what I have to tell you is I didn't know that these emails were being sent because nobody told me.
Huh.
Nobody told me this was going on. My boyfriend was protecting me.
Oh.
I had my own horrific relationship breakup and divorce going on.
Mhm.
My boyfriend was trying to protect me. So I was blindsided. I had no idea.
Mhm.
So then on 3 months later, she sends an email that when Judi Atwood is frustrated, my son bites me.
Uh-uh. Now, you know what? That sounds like an alienator there.
Yes. Oh, and also I forgot to mention that this went to a parent coordinator decision maker. And he ignored it. So then in 2018, late June, she instructs my then boyfriend to drive my daughters to Denver so she can have access to them.
Mm.
Then the same evening, the same evening, she sends an email three hours later and says, why are you not bringing Judy's daughters here to Denver? I can't wait. Then on February 27, 2019, she sends an email about, I was like 1:30 in the morning. Again, I was ousted as a girlfriend and you need to get rid of Judy. Okay, so now this is, they split up in 2013. This is 6 years later.
Yeah.
6 years later. So then she sends a note on, let's see, this is 6/27. She says, I know how many messages Judy is sending to her ex-husband, and he told me about her erratic behavior. So now she's meeting my ex-husband. And
Oh,
then on January 7th, 2021, she sends me an email and says, I met your ex-husband in a park and we had a great exchange.
oh,
Okay. So I didn't know anything, right? So this went on for 2015 to 2021. And this was January 7th, 2021. So not only did I get emails from her stating that she was meeting my ex-husband, she was also meeting with my ex-husband's opposing counsel, who used to represent my boyfriend. And my ex-husband was emailing me saying that he was meeting up with her as well. So suddenly I realized, given my situation in the family court system, that I'm in deep, serious trouble.
mhm.
All of those emails were sent to me, were shown to me in one night.
Oh,
And I'm already in this horrible, traumatic breakup that has been in Boulder County for 10 years. I woke up the next day. I got my dog and I drove to the Canadian border.
mm,
I'm like, I have got to get out of this country. I am not safe here. Reading those emails, I was terrified. And I also know that, you know, part of the problem for domestic violence victims and mothers is stacking the deck at times involves law enforcement agencies.
mhm.
And this is a small town and I wasn't going to get any help. And I knew that. So I had, this is winter. I believe it was January 16th. I had $200 in my bank account that I had from unemployment insurance, because this is during COVID.
Mhm.
I had no coat, no phone, no GPS. And I just traumatized, just drove to the border. I stopped somewhere, I don't remember, and I think I spent the night in my car.
Mhm.
And the next day I made it to Montana. And I was outside of a church in Montana. I had no coat and I was praying. I was didn't want to go inside because I thought if anybody saw me crying, I might get in trouble.
Mhm.
So I stood outside and I was crying, and the priest came out and he called the police. He called the police to do like a check to make sure that I was okay, right?
Mhm.
Somebody had told him I was out there for hours. I don't really know how long I was out there.
Oh.
So the police came, and he was a nice man.
Mhm.
But what he did was he called the Longmont PD. And he said to the Longmont PD, do you know, Judi Atwood? And the Longmont PD said, yes, her ex-husband just filed a protection order on her. And I'm like, I'm getting out of here.
Mhm.
I'm not going through this. And I just, no way. There's no way. So I end up getting the police officer puts me in a hotel room that night and buys me dinner.
Mhm.
And he draws me a map on how to get to the Canadian border. And I get to this little town on the border. And what my intentions were is to head to the Alberta crossing, Alberta, Canada, right?
Mhm.
But this little town told me, bad weather, don't go that way. You got to go through Washington. So again, on a Post-it note, they drew a map on how I could get from Montana to Washington.
Mhm.
And what I have to tell you is I have the worst sense of direction. So
Yeah.
that I
Same.
ended up where I did is amazing, right? So I land in Washington State, and domestic violence, sexual assault picks me up. And when I mean they pick me up is they start supporting me. They hear my story. They put me in a hotel room. I've got my dog. My dog can stay in the hotel room with me. And I told them my plan is to head for the Canadian border. And they said, it's not going to happen. You are not going to get across the Canadian border because the border is closed due to COVID, and only mandated workers can get across, right?
Mhm.
And I went to bed that night, and I was just terrorized. I mean, I couldn't believe that this was happening. I mean, I thought it was bad enough in my own case. And so I picked up the phone and I called the Canadian embassy, and I don't remember what the reaction was, but I don't really think I gave the person an opportunity to say much on the phone. And the answer I got was, I'll meet you at the Canadian border 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, and we'll get you across.
Oh, wow.
So I got across the border. Then the Canadian government, the embassy, put me in a hotel where I had to isolate for 14 days because of COVID measures, right? Well, this was a hotel that had room service, right? Not only for me, but for my dog. My dog was eating steak and shrimp, and
Awesome.
and it was run by the Canadian Red Cross. And the Canadian Red Cross took myself and my dog out 5 times a day for walks around this beautiful courtyard. And so once I got out of isolation, which was 14 days later, the first thing I did was I went and got a Canadian phone. And I called my kids because I hadn't spoken to them in a while. And I told them that I had to spend some time in Canada. And I called the Boulder County Courthouse. And I said, I need a copy of this protection order against me. And they said it didn't exist. So now I'm in another country with the borders closed, and I can't get home.
Oh, no. Oh, my God.
So I am a Canadian citizen. I'm here in the United States on a green card. So, and the reason why I ran is because a protection order can be used against my immigration status. And that was something that my abuser used against me repeatedly. In fact, I have an email stating that he was going to pay somebody to put a protection order on me. So it would interfere with my immigration status. So I ended up staying in Canada for about 4 or 5 months. And then I decided, to start thinking about coming home, right? But I had taken up an apartment there. So I had things in my apartment, and I'd met my boyfriend in Washington State and got my paddle board. So, I mean, if I'm going to be stuck for a while, at least let's enjoy it. And at that point, so I could get across the border, but every time I came back, I had to do like a 14-day isolation. And what I should tell you is I decided to make good use of my time, and I went to college. I took some college classes while I was there, and I thought this will be really good. And I was actually feeling like it was doing me a great deal of good to heal and get out of the situation for a while, right? What I should say is I tried all kinds of therapies to help my PTSD. And my PTSD came from a situation I was involved in 2016. I was robbed. I had my car broken into, and I was, so my car was stolen. I had you could tell I'm triggered, right?
Oh,
My car was stolen, my apartment was broken into, and I was robbed. While that was happening, and what I should say, my PTSD was flared up because my PTSD is from domestic violence.
Mhm.
So this was flaring up my PTSD. My abuser was texting me, telling me while I'm in the police interview about my car being stolen. He's texting me, telling me he's going to take me to court for contempt of court because I don't have a way of bringing my children to school. And I'm just like, I'm going like, oh, this is just too much for me, right? So, and then I lost half my family. I lost my brother and my father, and so it was just too much all at once. And as we all know, the family court system is the most toxic, the most vile
Oh, yes.
system to be in. So, when you're not the target, like these attorneys, they thrive in this environment, right? Us moms, we didn't go to school to become attorneys.
Mm-mm.
Excuse me, we don't know this kind of this vile, toxic environment that they thrive in. So it's really hard for people to come off the playground and be a stay-at-home mom into a shark net, right? It's like all of a sudden you're watching yourself, and it's horrid. Plus it's costly, right? So anyway, it was nice to get away from it. And I would say it was probably the most effective method was actually just getting away for 4 months. And, there was a border between us, between me and my then boyfriend's ex-girlfriend. So I felt safe for the first time. I mean, that's the other thing. She scared me. Like, this is a scary person to be going on like this for like 7 years.
Yeah,
This
completely
is nuts.
fixated on you.
Yes. So I came back, and then I decided to go back and close up shop. And I was kind of thinking, maybe I should stay and take some more courses, maybe this would be good. But I got a call from my younger daughter, and I was on contact with my children, that they were being they were already, from my perspective, pretty much alienated from me at this point. They had a caregiver they were very fond of, and I just thought, I can only chew off so much at once, right? So my daughter called me from Anaheim, California. She is 12 years old, and she's stranded. Her dad is in Colorado. The dad and the caregiver got into this rip-roaring fight. The dad missed his flight, and my daughter is in Anaheim with a caregiver that has no money. She has absolutely no money, no resources to get from the airport to the hotel room. She doesn't know if they have a hotel room. They're going to Disneyland, right? And I just knew that at this point, that caregiver was going to be gone, that she was going to be fired, that and I just knew that I really had to get back into the country and let my girls know that I'm here. I knew they were going to need me, and it turns out that I was able to help them from Canada. I mean, by trade, before I got married, I was an IT person. So I immediately went into like troubleshooting mode. I got them some gift certificates so they could use it for money. I got them, I talked to the person that waited on their table and said, I can pay for it over the phone, but over the phone, give you a credit card number. I called the hotel to make sure that they could check into their hotel. And I assured my child, that she was going to be okay, but I knew I had to head back. So I head back, I pretty much am already home because I came back in like April and I just went back to get some stuff, finish some courses, and then I was taking a carload back, right? I've only been in, I was only back in America for 10 days when my then boyfriend got an email basically stating that he was going to be interviewed by a court-appointed psychologist. And this court-appointed psychologist initially told him that I would have to be part of the interview because I lived with him, right? This was in August, right? So first, let me tell you, we have laws, right? We have laws in Colorado. We have one that's 14-10-127. In preparing the report concerning a child, the evaluator may consult any person who may have information about the child or the child's potential parenting arrangements. It does not say that any person consulted by a PRE, which is Parent Responsibility Evaluator, is obligated to provide the PRE with whatever information that he wants. Right? That's the law. So my boyfriend says, okay, my girlfriend does not provide care for my son, which I don't. First of all, the schedule for my boyfriend's son was crazy. After school therapies, tutoring, never left alone with him. And we never wanted to parent each other's child. It's just too confusing for children. I mean, like, you've got a mom, you've got a dad. If the dad has a girlfriend, that doesn't mean she's a parent, and that's what that was what we decided on and how we were going to run our relationship. And it's just too confusing for kids, right? So my boyfriend told this psychologist on November 23rd, she's not involved. My girlfriend's not involved in raising my son, right? But this psychologist changed his tune on November the 24th and said, if your girlfriend lives with you, I need to meet her.
It's like, are we in high school?
Yeah. So the psychologist insists that I cook him dinner.
Whoa.
Okay. This psychologist does this to every parent going through this evaluation. He insists that the parents make him a meal.
Oh my God.
Right.
Now that's crazy.
Yeah, that is really bizarre and crazy. And also, while he was in our home, he says in front of me to my boyfriend, he says, a gentleman waits for the lady to sit first, but I guess there are no gentlemen here tonight.
Ooh.
And
that's crazy.
I'm a Canadian woman. My eyes got a little big. But I said nothing. So the next day, that was December 8th. So the next day, December the 9th, he insisted that we all go to his office, right? So I'm like, okay. And I sat outside of the interview room for 5 hours.
Oh no.
And he never spoke to me. Never said a word to me. Then on December 20th, my boyfriend's ex-girlfriend calls his office, the psychologist's office, and says, Judy is calling me at midnight. She's calling me and telling me that my son is gay. And what she sends are screenshots of the calls, and guess what? None of these calls were ever answered. That's what the evidence that she sent shows, that she's never picked up these calls. Not to mention that I would never do that, but the psychologist believes her.
Oh my God.
So the
A nightmare.
psychologist, I know. So, and this is Christmas too, right? Let's
Oh.
remember, this is supposed to be a fun time of the year. Kids are on vacation, right? So on December 20th, I get a call from the doctor, and he says, you have to be in my office tomorrow morning. I'm giving you 24 hours and I'm going to do psychological testing with you.
Evil.
So I sent him an email and I said, I got to tell you something. Okay. I have my own protracted litigation going on. I have had 4 parental responsibility evaluations. I've had 5 independent psychological evaluations by 5 psychologists and 3 by psychiatrists. And I can tell you that any more testing is not only, I mean, you keep giving the same test. It's not effective, right? But it's, at this point, it's psychological abuse, right?
Yes.
I know that the opposing counsel has never believed any of the psychiatrists, psychologists that says, I'm not mentally ill, right? And they used this as a tool against me, right? So I realized sending him an email probably isn't sufficient. So I sent him a cease and desist. But in the cease and desist letter, I clearly let him know that I would be, I would follow the law, which says I would be like a reference for the boy and testify to my then boyfriend's skills as a parent. And I would gladly come in after Christmas. I had plans to go to Texas for Christmas, and there was just no way I could come in. So on December the 27th, he got the cease and desist letter on December 24th. On December the 27th, he issues his report to the court. There's a page on me. There's a page on me. And it basically says that I'm not to be around my boyfriend's son. I'm unfit. It
This
gets
is almost like a CPS caseworker coming up with this stuff.
It gets worse.
Oh, God.
So they go into a hearing, and I think it was 3 or 4 months after the report was filed with the court. I wasn't subpoenaed. I wasn't present. And the magistrate issues a court order without even, I had no due process. I had no ability to even defend against these stupid phone call accusations. She issued an order that I couldn't be around the boy. And what I should mention is I also sent a cease and desist letter to the ex-girlfriend, right?
Yes.
I'm like, you've got to stop this, right? Did she stop? No. So now she's emailing me and telling me through my boyfriend that I'm not allowed to live where I'm living, that I have to get out of the house. So at this point, I'm like, this is such a violation of my civil rights, every right that you can imagine. So I write a letter to the Chief Justice, Ingrid Backey in Boulder County. And I said, this is a violation of my due process. This magistrate has no jurisdiction over me. There was no subpoena. I wasn't even given an opportunity to present an argument, either with the PRE or with the court. And so my boyfriend goes back to hearing 2 months later, and the magistrate intercepts my letter to the Chief Justice and reads it on record in her courtroom.
Mm.
And then issues a statement on record that says, we know who Judi Atwood is in Boulder County, in this courthouse, and we don't like her. And that goes on record. So I filed a complaint against this magistrate with
Mhm.
the Office of Attorney Regulations because she's a magistrate as opposed to a judge.
Mhm.
And that comes back from the ORC, but basically says, oh, she didn't violate your due process. This is okay. But apparently there was a status hearing recently, and what the magistrate said is that I'm allowed to live in the home, but I'm not allowed to have any interaction with the boy. And that is how family court is. That's a technical overview of how family courts are working.
Mhm.
This is what taxpayers are spending their money on.
Mhm.
This is how these judicial officers are treating women in the courtrooms. This is how the game of like telephone. This is how a extremely revengeful somebody that's not playing with a full deck uses the family court
Mhm.
system to get rid of somebody. And what I got to tell you is that nobody ever complained about me. The boy had so many therapists, and he always spoke kindly about me.
Mhm.
We, because I wasn't parenting, he didn't have a problem with me. And he had a nickname for me. And, he was very fond. And there was a multiple people who, some that had spent a lot of time with us that would testify that there was no problem
Mhm.
at all. But this is how the family court system is working. And this cost me thousands of dollars because
Mhm.
I had to get my own attorney. I had to talk about this to my own attorney. I had to figure out what I could do. I had to hire people to get legal advice from other people about how to write a cease and desist letter. I mean, this was very costly. And this is just somebody that clearly isn't playing with the full deck, that refused to call the investigative agencies, that is actually a mandated reporter herself.
Mhm.
And this is how she interferes with somebody she dated 10 years ago.
Now that is absolutely crazy.
And people don't believe us how these situations arise in the family court system.
Mhm.
And this is what parents go through all the time.
Mhm. Mhm.
If we stuck to evidence, like if we ran the family court system more like there's problems in the criminal justice system as well.
Yeah.
But excuse me, if we ran the family courts just like child protection services, if we stuck to evidence instead of stacking the deck, we had a situation here in Colorado. I know we're running out of time here, but we had one CPS agent in Arapahoe named Robin Nasita,
Mhm.
who was basically telling parents that if you don't have sex with me, I'm going to terminate your parental rights. And 40 families came up and said, this is happening. And the reason why that happens is because these agents have no oversight. Nobody is watching, like even the parent coordinator decision makers. They should have reported these,
Mhm.
jealous statements. These became very problematic. They should have reported this. They should have reported this obsessive, jealous, these constant emails. I should have been warned because, clearly there was a huge problem here. And I wasn't aware. I had reached out to her once after the first email, and I sent her a Facebook note, and I asked her, like, would she be comfortable having coffee with me? You know, and this was in 2015. And it's just absolutely crazy that one person can ruin a relationship and ruin somebody's life with this stuff that's in her head that makes no sense.
And it happens every day, and people don't know this.
You know, it really can't be that difficult to test for personality disorders. You know, when somebody shows that much jealousy and wanting to control another person's life, what would it take? I mean, I really don't understand. It seems to me that anybody looking at the emails that's a psychologist would say, you know, there's a problem here, and it's not the girlfriend.
You're right. Like they see the pattern of all these emails. What is wrong with these people that are in control of our lives?
Well, they're stacking the deck. They're not paying. I mean, one of the things what I'd like to mention is that, you know, these judges, the judicial officers, these people, these third parties, these PCDMs, these PREs, they're trying to stack in too much. There should be legislation that says lawyers can only take so many clients, that PCDMs can only work on so many cases at one time, and that PREs can only handle so many cases at one time, because what they're doing is, and judges, right? So, I mean, that's where I kind of fail the legislators. If the judges have way too many cases, then they need to get some more funding, right? And I think a lot of that game of telephone, just certain things stand out to these judicial officers, and they just go with it. They don't look at anything else at that point. They get their minds made up, and they're like, okay, you know what? This is it. And no matter what you say, no matter what you do, no matter what evidence you have, we are going to label you. And we're going to label you. In my case, I was labeled a problem in my own personal case, and then labeled a problem in my then boyfriend's case. And I'm like, I didn't even have a chance in my boyfriend's case to defend myself.
I'm so sorry. This is terrible. So, and there's no repercussions for this ex-girlfriend who's running around like a crazy nut.
No, and the thing is, she's still trying, she's still saying, I mean, even with the cease and desist, she's still telling the magistrate that I am a problem, and I need, and you know, the latest is I have to move out of my home, right? You know, it's just absolutely insanity. And I would think that anybody that went to school to be a psychologist would recognize how troubling that pattern, that aggressive pattern of behavior against, you know, another parent. You would think that would be a red flag. Instead, it was ignored by so many judicial officers, like, and not only judicial officers, but like state actors, right? It's like there was red flags all over this. And, you know, my boyfriend was just trying to protect me, right? He didn't want me to all concerned because I already was dealing with a lot. And, but, you know, she is the reason that I left the United States of America. I was terrified. And, you know, sure enough, that was used against me in my own case.
Typical. Yes. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think the family court should just be abolished and take everything down to civil court, where we can choose to have a jury of 12, not 6, but 12 jurors.
I don't think you know something, I totally agree with you. And I agree that no child from no bond with any parent should be severed by one person. right? By one judicial officer, by one CPS agent, right? Because do not tell me that CPS, when they get together and they have these meetings regarding like dependency and neglect, that they're actually, they do not have a multidisciplinary team. They're stacking the deck too. And they need a jury. They need people in there. No child should be removed by any parent by one single biased decision. Because it's too expensive to get the children back. The damage is done.
Yes.
Once that child is removed, it's devastating to the child. And, it will take a long time to build up that trust again, trust in people, and trust in the system, trust in law enforcement.
Yeah, that's one of my kiddos has trust issues.
Oh, I'm sure.
I wonder why.
Right. There's far too many people that are interested in these cases, but not interested in the children. And unfortunately, I think what I will say is I worked in IT, right? And I worked in IT during the years where the boom was happening. And this is what I think is happening in family court. Back then, there were so many jobs. So there was a huge boom. It was the .com boom, right? I think it just aged myself.
No.
But we were hiring engineers left, right, and center. And like, you could go take a 3-month course to become an engineer, right? And this is what's happening in the family court system. These people who went, they're figuring out they can make a lot of money. This is a huge industry. It's a $50 billion cottage industry. They're figuring out they can make a lot of money. So you get all these people that are coming in to make the money, but they really don't care about the kids. Their initiative to come into the family court system and to work, it's more about the money that they can make and less about doing a great job for kids.
And
that's also exactly.
Yes. And I also think they get some pleasure out of tormenting a target parent.
I definitely think that they enjoy watching people suffer. I think that you have to be, so, people say, oh, they're a narcissist, right? I believe that people have different levels of narcissism, right? And I believe in order to be a judge, you have to have a higher level of being a narcissist because you had to survive law. Most judges come from law firms, right? So you had to survive the actual family court industry. And don't tell me that over years, that as you work in family law, you become less empathetic towards families, right? And you see all kinds of stuff. But the thing to remember, like, it might be funny, but people are acting this way. They're acting out of character because a divorce is one of the biggest things you'll go through in your lifetime. That and the death of a family. It's very traumatic. And these people are exploiting us.
Oh, definitely. I remember walking up to my ex's attorney. We were in Superior Court going to argue. At some point, they have you lined up for, say, 11 o'clock that you're going to argue, but really it turns into 2 p.m. But anyway, I went up to him and I said, what would you do if your wife was doing this to you? And I saw a glimmer of like, And then right away he turned back to the sociopath he has been behaving like.
Right.
This is what we're dealing with, is a bunch of sociopaths.
There's definitely a level. I mean, there's a psychology article I read, and it's like the highest number of sociopaths are in family law. I mean, they're lawyers, right? And so it attracts that kind of person, right? And I definitely believe that my opposing counsel gets off on seeing me suffer. Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Yes, absolutely.
I totally agree with you there.
Yeah, I definitely, it's all, her emails to me are so horrific and vile and
Mhm.
just filled with hate. And that's all I really should say, because it's just troubling to try and be a person that wants to solve this issue. I mean, it's so costly to be in family court for 10 years.
Mhm.
And it's, the difference in my assets compared to, and I would not be here if I would not be in family court for 10 years if my opposing counsel did not have access to my boyfriend's financials. I can guarantee you that.
Mhm.
She knows what my settlement was. There's no way. She knows I'm a full-time student, but that firm doesn't care about my kids. They care about what their monthly income is.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's a sad thing.
And I like to also tell parents that when you're in say, a child support de novo hearing, we call it de novo hearing. Well, it means new beginning in Latin, which means new beginning of hell. But anyway, the thing is, when these opposing attorneys ask you your new spouse's income, how I answered that was, he's not part of the equation. And
That's
she just was irritated. I wasn't gonna bring him into it. These aren't his kids.
well, I gotta, my question for the magistrates for the Boulder County Courthouse. Let me ask you, right? You made me pay for 5 PCDMs. I've had 14 judges on my case. I've been in family court for 10 years. And you give me a magistrate that just got passed over for judgeship, and you think that's going to solve this issue? You gave me 4 PREs, but you think I'm the only problem in the system? I'm sorry. Then clearly this is stacking the deck against one person.
Mhm.
And I think they just want to see how much I can take.
Oh, right, right. I agree with you. I mean, I kept coming back. I was a fighter. I just kept coming back. I think that's how I won one of my cases. But I mean, it's just the persistence of, here I am, still here.
Right. Well, I can write a really good letter. And and the thing is, you picked on the wrong thing. My body will break down before my mind will.
Exactly. Right. Right. And it's pretty sad when a target parent gets picked on so bad they do fall ill.
Well, they fall. Well, I mean, I know that I suffered severely, but my children are suffering, and you're taking away from my college fund for my kids. You
Right.
know, you're taking that away from them. And you know, like I said, and I'll say this over and over again: who's needs the psychiatrist, the protective mom, or the attorney that makes a living destroying the bond between mothers and children and goes home every night and has dinner with her own family?
Mhm.
She's so separated from what she's doing for a living. Who needs a psychiatrist? That mom or that attorney?
Yeah, these attorneys and judges should be drug tested and also psych evals routinely.
Oh, I definitely will. I mean, so the family, I mean, I tried one-on-one advocacy for a long time. Well, not a long time. I did it for about a year, and it is so stressful, right? So
Mhm.
let's be serious. Listening to these cases over and over again, people acting badly, because we all act badly when we're getting a divorce, right? It's not like the difference between my Facebook post before I got divorced and after I was going through a divorce. But the truth is, these attorneys know how to create conflict in people,
Mhm.
right? And they have to take responsibility for that. They have to say, like, people, you should be focused on non-conflict,
Mhm.
not provoking it. And these attorneys know how to provoke conflict, especially when there's a lot of money involved.
Oh, yes.
And,
Oh.
if we made everybody hold them responsible for their actions, these protracted cases like mine would not exist.
Mhm.
Opposing counsel knows how to just dig into underneath my skin. Like she knows, she pours salt on my wounds and she just sits there and laughs at me. And she does this repeatedly. And it's really, and gaslights. And it's really, really, really damaging.
Yeah, they're sickos.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
They have no regard.
no.
Like, you know, what's really terrible is she lives 10 minutes from where I live. So she's in
Oh,
my community, right?
oh, yuck.
And like that's just what, like, Longmont is a very small community, and that's what's so bad. And it's not just the opposing counsel for my boyfriend that she's gone to other attorneys. And you know, it's really awful. Like it's like a conspiracy. Like,
Yes.
you know, it's like I oh, and the other thing I should mention um is I actually went out one night and I was like in a social setting, and this person came up to me and said, you know, just started talking to me and said, "Oh my, are you Judi Atwood?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said to me, "You know that this person, this opposing counsel, has it out for you."
Hmm.
And I was just like, whoa, right? Now I've got like a couple angry women after me here
Oh,
in Longmont, Colorado. Boy, I'm going to walk to my car really fast.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was like really, it was really scary. And I guess I wouldn't have been like, you know, maybe I would have taken that as hearsay, but I just had this horrific experience with my boyfriend's ex. And these people, there are people out there like that, you know, that are just they won't give up. They just, there's no boundaries.
Right. Right. Still, I mean, after all these years, I'm hearing snippets from my kids, you know. I don't know. It's very, very weird. I would think though, you know, like if you were the, we'll say the wife that married this male, this abusive male that's coming after you, wouldn't you say to him, what? I mean, why are you bothering your ex-wife like this? I mean, is it our relationship fulfilling enough?
Yeah, I mean,
I would be like, I'm divorcing you because you're still caught up on her.
I, you know, it's funny because like, so what's really awful about like a protracted divorce is like every third party that comes into your case treats you like you just got divorced, right? And I'm like,
Right,
I don't know anything about my ex. I haven't lived with them for 10 years. What do you want me to say?
right.
Right? You know, I know that it's like oil and vinegar. Like, yeah, I think I already proved that to you. It's 10
Oh my
years.
God.
10 years of going through a divorce. I mean, I don't even feel like I even got divorced, right? Like it's
No.
just, and what I will also will say, this is not the first time that that other like former business partners were involved in my case, as if they were on the opposing counsel side, which was just really bizarre. So, um, you know, I just feel like I am actually I'm very concerned about my well-being
Mhm.
in terms of being safe here in Colorado because of what I've experienced and because the stacking of the deck against people. They just, you know, I cannot get help from law enforcement for this type of harassment. And it definitely affects my day-to-day living. Like
Mm.
you know, I'm scared. Like this person is clearly,
A terrorist.
yes, yeah. And it's like, you know, I don't understand somebody that is so obsessed, what will they do next?
Hmm.
Right. So I live in hypervigilance when I'm out. I'm concerned. I'm concerned with this getting to my children.
Mm.
And it's really awful. That's all I can say is the last 10 years of my life have been a living, breathing hell.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think we have a lot in common,
Yeah.
really.
Welcome to hell.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to have you back on to my podcast because there's more we have to talk about. But if someone wants to contact you, how do you want to be contacted?
So I have a Yahoo account that I use for um just for outside contacts. My that's Jatwood, JATWOOD 13 at yahoo.com. If you're an advocate, please connect with me on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad to share information. There's a lot of great advocacy groups that are sharing a lot of new information that's coming through the newspapers, stories. I do feel like we are getting more and more reporters interested in these cases, which
Mm-hmm.
is great because I think it helps legislators and senators understand how problematic the judicial branch can be.
Mm-hmm.
And so yes, I welcome anybody that wants to connect. I have a lot of information that I can share if you need help with if you're pro se.
Oh yes, yeah.
What I will also let you know is that I'm currently in the Court of Appeals. So I have this is the first time in 10 years that I was brave enough to go to the Court of Appeals, and I'm writing my own material.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to be in this situation. It's a challenge to try and focus as a full-time student. And it's exceptionally hard to be an alienated parent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're going through a lot.
I'm going through a lot, but I will do good by my children. I will never give up on my children.
Mm-hmm.
Never. No matter how hard the opposing counsel pushes. I don't care. No matter what this lady keeps emailing people, I will not give up on my children.
Mm-hmm.
I
Well
will not
said.
be, yeah,
Yeah.
I will not. I will not stop bringing it to people's attention that this horrific game of telephone, these strange, bizarre accusations that come out of somebody's head and taken into a courtroom so that it actually makes somebody leave their own home is simply ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And magistrates need to get more training if this is how they're making their judicial decisions. It's absolutely outrageous.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, I don't have a lot of respect for magistrates. But we are going to talk again because you're coming back on, Judy.
Okay. Well, I hope I didn't bore anybody. I really want people to understand that all it takes is a thought in somebody's head that's just not playing with the full deck, and that can put a parent out of their home.
Mm-hmm. And or out of a career as well.
Out of a career, I mean, these civil cases are not cheap. Their
Right.
family law attorneys bill $300 to $400 an hour. And
Mm-hmm.
I probably wasted $10,000 on this woman that had some thoughts in her head and some jealousy.
Ugh.
And it was simply outrageous. Simply outrageous.
Well, hey, don't jump off, okay?
Okay.
Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I am your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here with Judi-Beth Atwood and other exciting guests. And I totally thank you for coming on the podcast, Judy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marianne.
Okay.